Defensiveness might be the single most important thing in a relationship that we need to work through. And it's connected to being triggered and reactive and self-protective. And those are really the pieces that we need to understand on a microscopic level if we're going to work through being triggered in these human animal bodies. And that's really one of the core struggles that couples have is, what do I do when I get hurt or triggered or upset, reactive? How do I share what hurts me, bothers me, or upsets me with my partner in a way that doesn't trigger their defensiveness? Because I need to bring that up. It's like we metaphorically step on each other's toes while we're dancing. And I go, ow, that hurt. And then my partner goes, well, it's your fault, or I didn't mean to. And in that subtle interaction, in all of these micro interactions, we are invalidating each other unwittingly with good intentions. So I want to share with you a few stories that are going to help illustrate this. What doesn't work, where we get trapped and stuck in terms of defensiveness, and then what to do differently instead. The first time I remember ever applying validation to de-escalate conflict on purpose was over a decade ago. I'm standing in the kitchen of my house with a new girlfriend. And for whatever reason, my ex-girlfriend comes up in conversation. And she gets super mad, triggered. And my instinct is to explain why she doesn't need to be upset. I'm over her. It's not a big deal. You don't need to be upset. That's everyone's first response. Everyone's first response that doesn't work is defending or explaining their good intentions. And what we're really trying to do is say, if you could just see things my way, you wouldn't be upset. So let me just explain to you my perspective or what I meant, and then you won't be hurt anymore. Unfortunately, that is invalidation 101. And, Martin Luther King famously said, a riot is the language of the unheard. And so even with a good intention, we're explaining our point of view, but we're doing the opposite of empathy in that moment. We're making it about us instead of acknowledging the pain. Now, why do we do that? Because we're getting defensive. Because it seems like when I hurt someone, that the person who did the hurting is the bad person, the one who shouldn't have done something bad or wrong, right? Was I right or wrong in bringing up my ex? Should I have not brought up my ex in that conversation? Not the point. And that's where couples get stuck in objectivity battles. Are you mean or not mean? Are you insensitive or not insensitive? Is it this or is it that? Is it black or is it white? Is it my view versus your view? Good, bad, right, wrong, losing paradigm. Whose fault is it? If that is the governing question of your relationship, who's right, who's wrong, whose fault is it? You're stuck in perpetual conflict. So instead, I caught myself for the first time ever, and I said, I can see how, given that we're new, I was just dating this person for, let's say, 2 to 4 weeks, and given that I was in this relationship for 2 years and I was actually getting close to marriage, we were looking at rings, I could see how me bringing her up in conversation would make you feel insecure, maybe scared that you might lose me, and then it might come off as insensitive to you. I'm sorry, I won't bring it up again. Boom, conflict de-escalated in 30 seconds. Why? I joined her in her experience. I validated her subjective experience rather than arguing over objectivity. And that's what I call crossing the street. And that's the real practice of empathy. Empathy is leaving behind your perspective to tour their house. Because conflict is, you had two different experiences of the same event. And now you're arguing over which one's right. But that's like you have a house of understanding that's on one side of the street. I have a house of understanding that's on the other side of the street. Something happened in the middle. We both saw the same thing literally from different angles. So neither person is actually objectively right or wrong. That's not the point. We saw things from different angles. So now we need to take turns validating each other's subjective experience. However, it's not that easy. You will notice that even though you know that now, it's still going to be really challenging to do. Why is that? I'm going to help you remove your resistance to empathy, because that's where we get stuck. I can't empathize with someone who I don't comprehend. That's just wrong. It's just factually, logically wrong. You're right. You have to practice psychological flexibility. We have to practice differentiation. In order to tour their house, I have to have a strong sense of myself. I have to know that I'm a good person. I have to know what I saw and the way I saw it and be calm, cool, collected, confident in that. If I'm not, if I can't differentiate my experience from yours, because we're more codependent than we realize, I can't maintain my sense of self, tour your perspective, and then return to mine. So that's the psychological standpoint of what stops people from empathizing. I have to have a strong, solid sense of self and be open to influence and flexible simultaneously, which means I have to be able to hold two opposing perspectives simultaneously. Empathy does not mean that you agree with the other person. Empathy is not enabling the other person's poor behavior. Those are two other big hang-ups. Empathy is not admitting fault, admitting guilt, admitting badness. And so that's what cuts us off, right? We think that if I empathize with you, you're going to think that I agree with you. And if you're right, then I'm wrong. And I'm not wrong, so I will not empathize with you. So you have to be able to hold this dialectic, which is, I'm a good person and I hurt you by accident. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I hurt you. And so one of the metaphors I work with in partnership is you're not in two different kayaks anymore. You're in a canoe. And in a canoe, what partnership is you're giving each other feedback because you're in a system about what it's like to be with each other. Because every move of the boat, imagine a canoe, every time I move to the left, you feel it. When you move to the right, we feel it. Sometimes I move and I hit you in the water and you go, hey, you hit me in the water. And I go, no, I didn't mean to. You were leaning to the side and then I moved and then you fell in. That's not my fault. Invalidating them again. So the unlock here is realizing that I can be a good person and hurt you. In other words, what I'm acknowledging through empathy is your subjective experience of the impact I had on you. I can acknowledge impact, which means connect my actions to your pain without making myself a bad person. But if you're committed to holding me in a negative light and saying you're a victim and I'm a villain, we've lost before we've begun. So we have to move outside of the victim-villain mentality to just acknowledging impact. Another way I put it is we're contributing to each other's pain. We're not the cause of it. We're not at fault because of it. But in that same boat, when you take something I said the wrong way, like in the instance of my new girlfriend, she made up a story that now she's going to be left and I'm being mean and insensitive by bringing up my ex. Am I being mean and insensitive? No. That's not true. She's making that up. She's misinterpreting what I'm saying. That's not either of our fault. That's happening automatically. So in partnership, that's what we're working with. So I can see that you've misinterpreted what I said. And if I interpreted it that way, and if I were you and given the context of everything, because we got to go macro a lot of times, or sometimes in partnership, one person's had a bad day, or their mom died, or they're on a certain day of their cycle, or they haven't slept in days, and they become more agitated, and that mood has us misinterpret things more easily. So sometimes if we can't validate or empathize with someone's subjective experience immediately, that's just a call for us to get more curious. And this has happened many times with me. A story you'll hear me talk often about, because I think it's such a drastic, extreme story, is when my partner accused me of scolding her. She erupted in public, said, "You're scolding me." I was like, "I am not scolding you." And we got into a thing. And then we had this long, silent car ride home. And in our repair conversation, when we arrived home, I had to get curious. How is it that for you, it feels like I'm scolding you? Because I'm comfortable having our interaction on TV in front of 8 billion people, and I'm pretty sure that they'd all agree I'm not doing that. But that's not the point. If you argue over objectivity, you both lose. Because remember, partnership is a 3-legged potato sack race. If my partner falls, it doesn't matter whose fault it is. If we bicker about whose fault it is objectively, we lose the race. So you have to understand the predicament of partnership. You are now a team. You are now a system. You are now in the same boat. You are in a 3-legged potato sack race, and it is actually in your best interest to repair, to yield, to humble yourself, to also stand up for yourself in loving power, in connection with the other person. So we're prioritizing connection above everything else because that's what makes our life better, and that's why we're in it together. We want to be connected. So what do we need to do to repair? So in that moment, what that sounded like for me was I had to get really curious. How for you and your nervous system is it feeling like I'm scolding you? I have to put aside that accusation for a second because everything in my ego wants to take that personally and defend why I'm not doing that. Because I agree with you guys, we do have to have some sense of objective truth in relationship. If you actually believe I'm scolding you, we have a problem, okay? But I'll get to that. So I find out that she had a really bad call with a friend prior to us going out on this 2-hour date. She's on a particular day in her cycle. She was really tired and probably shouldn't have even gone out for the date in the first place. And then I get in a bit of a mood or something, and I'm being condescending in micro ways that I'm not realizing, and she's not telling me over the course of this date. Sometimes I tease playfully and she takes it the wrong way, or maybe I am being condescending and I genuinely don't realize it. And so there's these micro jabs that are building up within the context of her being on her particular day of her cycle and having this bad conversation and being overtired and all of these things that lead to it feeling like I'm jabbing and then punching her emotionally. And so once I understood all of that, I could see, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And we're holding each other. We like to whisper as we repair. We hold each other, we whisper. And repair is empathy for the pain. That's it. But that's so hard because we resist empathy, because you have to take turns and you have to be able to differentiate yourself. You have to be able to put yourself aside for long enough to stay with the other person, to walk with them in their pain and their subjective experience long enough that they're like, oh my gosh, you completely get me. This is why I say repair is not saying I understand. It's demonstrating that you understand another person's perspective so completely that their nervous system relaxes because they feel you get it and they know they're not alone. You should be able to elaborate on your partner's point of view and explain from the inside out your partner's point of view better than they can themselves. If you do that, they have no reason to fight. They have no reason to speak more because you've spoken everything for them. You've thought their thoughts out loud and you've demonstrated that you get it. If you can't do that, that's your call to be curious. takes a little bit of work. That takes some humility. That takes some vulnerability. That takes putting yourself aside. That takes maturity, right? That takes differentiation. I have a different perspective than you. I can hold that for now as I walk with you in your experience. So we become companions on each other's journey. Take me on the tour of your house so that I can see things from your angle. It's not right making mine wrong. You just had a different experience than me that I want to understand because I care about you and I respect your version of reality. I don't want to argue with that. I'm here to learn. That's hard. Then we discover that she had a bully in her childhood as well. And that was actually triggering this old bruise, this emotional bruise, this wound from childhood, where she was reminded of being scolded and berated by this bully. That's actually what I was triggering in her. So we got down to the deepest level. Now we both have more compassion. She has more compassion for herself because she has a tendency to shame herself if we don't understand the context of where the reaction is coming from, right? And then I can have more compassion because I understand where it's coming from too. Great. That's repair on one side. Now she's got to be able to empathize with me too. So what's it like to be me and be accused of something that you're not doing? To be yelled at in public, to have no idea how I'm hurting her, and then she just erupts on me. Not fun to be me. She has to empathize with that. And then we're able to establish, okay, so I wasn't scolding you, but it did feel like it for you. There's the nuanced truth. It's not was I or wasn't I, simply black or white. It's I wasn't and it felt like it for you though. And I have to be able to validate and empathize with that. If I can't, that is what destroys relationships. Someone saying, I'm having an experience over here of pain. You're part of it. And then we say, no, I'm not. That's not happening. Let me just make that go away or not exist. Everyone does that. You don't have to be a narcissist to do that. We all do that. We all get defensive. We all get self-absorbed when we get hurt or when we are attacked, right? When someone's saying you're scolding me and you're not, like we've got a problem, right? And so how we share what's happening inside us when we get hurt is really important because obviously that's a great extreme example, right? Where she didn't have the awareness in that moment by no fault of her own to be able to say, whoa, it really feels like you're berating and scolding me right now. That's the story I'm making up. I want to believe that's not true, but I need you to know I'm being crazy hurt over here by you. And I have been this whole time. But that's really hard because a lot of us lack the awareness of that buildup that leads to the explosion. And that's where a lot of people think they need anger management when they get to this 10 out of 10 eruption, when really, no, you can't really stop the momentum at that point in time, and you don't need anger management. You need awareness of your boundaries, of when you're getting hurt and disrespected, and when you're getting poked, because we're all sensitive people. We're way more sensitive than we realize. And so when you start to build that awareness, then you can feel, oh, there's something off. I didn't like that. And you get better and better in partnership at bringing up those micro things in the moment and saying, that didn't feel good. And they go, oh, okay, tell me what didn't feel good about that. Now we can talk about it before it gets to the 10 out of 10. And so anger is pointing to several different things. Anger is a secondary emotion. So the way I like to describe or help you visualize primary and secondary emotions, which is huge in understanding and dissolving your own reactivity, is with the anger volcano. So picture a volcano. the top of the volcano, there's the secondary emotions, the big, fiery, violent eruption of anger, frustration, rage, hate, annoyance. But that eruption comes from, or extends out of, or originates from the gooey molten core underneath the Earth's crust or surface. And in the gooey molten core is the vulnerable emotions that we mask or protect with anger, because anger is actually a self-protective mask. Anger gives us power and control when we feel powerless and out of control. So you have to see that anger is a signal that points you to something deeper, and it's a mask. Now I want to go through a few different things that anger points to, because it's actually several different things. So one, it points to primary emotions. Primary emotions are hurt, helplessness, powerlessness, fear, disappointment, longing, shame. The core ones often being hurt, fear, powerlessness. There's flavors of a bunch of them most times. So you got to get in touch with that. You got to use your curiosity to go, oh, I'm angry. I want to blame externally, and I'm using that energy to go, okay, if there's blame that wants to go out there, that's pointing me to some uncomfortable primary emotion vulnerability down here. I got to get curious, because that's true every time with no exception, okay? So we're getting curious. Whoa, I'm feeling angry or frustrated. Could be a little minor frustration. What am I feeling? Because in a conflict, I guarantee you, none of us are saying, ow, that hurt. We're going, why did you do that? Instead of, ow, that hurt me. And so the difference there is I'm owning the pain, ow, that hurt, versus disowning the pain or projecting it through blame. So when I'm able to understand my reactivity, I have self-knowledge. I'm able to connect with, access, feel, and then reveal the inner workings of my own reactivity without acting it out unconsciously through blame. So anger also points to a boundary. And it might be a combination of these. So something that's not okay. Recently, there was a couple where one of the partner's parents would come over kind of uninvited weekend after weekend and stay a few nights. And this would be one of the many things that would trigger one of the partners, because they felt that they never had family time. So their partner's lack of boundaries with their parents encroached on their personal boundaries, and they didn't feel like they could get through to their partner. So they'd end up erupting, right? Hey, I don't like if your dad comes over all the time. And the partner would just respond, that's kind of just the way it is. Now that leaves me feeling what? Helpless. I can't create my own sanctuary. I can't create space. I can't guard my own freedom, individuality, and autonomy. There's someone who's just coming in that's equivalent to being touched non-consensually, right? I don't like that. And I'm saying, I don't like that. And your partner's going, that's just kind of the way it is. That's going to lead to reactivity every time, right? We're saying something's not okay. Something bothers me. And if you don't respond to that with an emotionally attuned response that says, hey, I see that that's bothering you. What do we need to do to work with this? You're going to have a problem. Anger also points to a protest to disconnection. This is based on attachment theory. So you'll notice in the still-faced baby experiment, you can check it out on YouTube, there's a mother and the baby, and they're interacting face-to-face, and they're having a great time. And then the mother goes, still face. Did I do it good? And the baby goes, what? They're kind of going, where did you go? Through their body language. And then eventually they kind of shriek, clearly in distress. And that same reaction is an attachment reaction, attachment fear, reaching for connection. And that's the same thing we do in our adult relationships. When someone withdraws emotionally, when we feel them shut down, pull away, usually because they're getting overwhelmed or need to protect their autonomy or individuality, it brings out this response that goes, hey, where did you go? I need you. I'm reaching for connection. Connection equals safety. I'm reacting in an angry, critical, demanding way to try and get you back. But the more that I pursue, become critical and demanding and angry, the more that you get overwhelmed and withdraw. And that's called the pursue-withdraw dynamic, and that implodes on itself. So anger also points to that protest to disconnection. Oh, I'm actually wanting to feel that connection because I'm trying to access safety through the connection itself. Anger also points to unmet needs or values. And that's from nonviolent communication. We know that needs are universal, and any unmet need oftentimes equals reactivity. Again, we revert to that childhood self where I'm not getting my needs met, and now I'm just crying out and going, I don't like that, and I don't even know what I need. I can't articulate it, but read my mind. I'm trying to draw an attuned response. So as adults, we're engaging in this reparenting experience where we're learning to go get curious about what is it that I'm needing that I'm not getting right now, and can I make a positive, conscious request rather than a demand or criticism. So I'm using my reactivity, my criticism, my complaint to alchemize that into a request. I'm discovering a need. Anger is a discovery of a boundary. Anger is a discovery of primary emotions. That's an amazing frame, right? So every time we get triggered, there's a learning, there's growth, there's discovery, and there's connection as we connect with those different parts of ourselves. And then we bring those into relationship in conscious ways. In the same way my partner did yesterday. She said, I'm feeling angry at you. Great, thanks for telling me. What are you angry about? Let's create some space for that. Much different than acting out the anger, right? Why did you do that? Just being in a grouchy mood and kind of holding it against me or being passive aggressive. So when we can notice and name our thoughts and feelings with detachment, like the story I'm making up is that you were pushing me away all yesterday. That's what she said. Actually, she said it slightly different than the first time. She's like, you've been pushing me away all week, in her mood. I was like, pushing you away all week? It's Tuesday. We had an amazing weekend, and you're just talking about Monday? You're talking about yesterday? We exaggerate things, right? When we're in states of being that are negative, right? When we're scared of not being heard, we feel like we need to exaggerate and make it a big deal because it's the only way that we've learned to be heard. But when you create enough safety in partnership, we de-escalate extremely quickly. I laughed at that. I go, it's okay. You can tell me about how you felt like I was pushing you away. And actually, I was able to just jump in and guess. So here's some more empathy and validation of what that sounds like. I said, I can see how, given that we had this epic, crazy, connective, deep, emotionally intimate weekend, and then suddenly we're apart on Monday, and I was very busy and totally focused and shifted my energy from complete attention to her to my work, that I could see how you would feel that withdrawal of energy. I did withdraw, not because I was angry at you. So she was asking, are you angry at me? Because we had a minor thing on the Sunday night just before we left each other. And I said, no, I didn't even think about that at all. So that's a great practice in checking assumptions, right? A lot of times we think our partner's angry at us. We may or may not be right. We're just stewing in our mind, making up all these assumptions. So check them. She said, are you angry at me? I said, no, not at all. But I can totally see how going from 100 to 0 with that little mini thing Sunday night, and then me literally withdrawing my energy would be kind of jarring for you. And if you're scared that she realized in a conversation with a friend, she was like, I'm scared that I might leave her. So there was an anxious attachment thing kind of going on, this deep fear of like, ooh, what if Brian does the same thing that other guy did? I think things are going well, but maybe they aren't, and he's not telling me something. See, the stories our head makes up. And so I said, no, I'm totally, and we like to do repairs, we're holding each other. No, I'm totally here, and I can totally see how for you that would be jarring. So this is good, awareness for me. I'm glad you told me, so that next time when I know an event like that's coming where we're like super connected, then I'm going away, I can give you extra reassurance that I just need all of my time and energy over here. I'm not mad at you. And we can make a conscious transition from deep connection to more of these individual autonomy-driven experiences. And that's where there's a tension oftentimes between those opposing needs for connection and autonomy or individuality. So let's do a little review as we wrap up here. We have to understand what empathy is. Empathy is walking in their shoes, seeing through their eyes, and it's demonstrating that you understand their experience from the inside out so well that they have no need or reason to speak any words because you've spoken them for them. You found the emotionally resonant words that match their experience. In order to do that, you're going to need to get curious. You're going to need to differentiate your subjective experience from their subjective experience and not take the bait to get sucked into these objectivity battles. Like in the scolding story. Am I scolding you or not? Not the point. This is about how we impacted each other. And when you make it about impacting each other, it depersonalizes it. This isn't about you being a good or bad person. You hurt me and you're a good person. Both are true. When we get hurt, we get self-absorbed. That's okay. Both of us are always demanding empathy. Empathy is the bridge to understanding. So we both want empathy and understanding, but we resist that. So empathy is not agreeing with them. It has to do with their subjective experience. Validation is the active form of empathy. Empathy having two parts: perspective taking. I need to imagine what it's like to be you, which means I need to get outside of my own experience. And you can do that. It's a muscle. Once I imagine what it's like to be you, validation is the way that I'm putting it into words. I'm explaining that your thoughts and feelings make sense from the inside out. If you can't do that, that's your call to get curious. It's okay if you don't understand them. It's okay if you can't comprehend them. That's a great chance to learn, to grow together. I want to know you more and what it's like to be you. So please help me understand you. What that's going to require is you to take turns. You can't have a conversation or repair conversation when you're triggered. And you can't have a normal conversation, which I mean you can't go back and forth like we normally do. We go, yes, but here's my point of view. Yes, but here's my point of view. Doesn't work. You have to consciously take turns. As the listener, I put myself aside for a period of time, longer than 5 minutes. Most people struggle to do this for 30 seconds because they get triggers so fast and so easily. And that's a lack of differentiation again. I had a different experience than you. It's okay. I'm not bad or wrong. We can reassure each other. We can appreciate each other. We can wrap each other in a warm balm of connection, appreciation, and connectedness. And then I got to join you in your experience. The listener goes on the speaker's ride. It's I join you on your train of thought. And it's up to each of us to work as a team. Understanding is a team game to help make it easy for you to get on my train of thought and follow me step by step by step. I got to make it easy for you to get my train of thought. That means I'm not blaming or accusing you. That's why using language like, the story I'm making up is this, or I'm scared about our future together, but I know that triggers you, and I'm not saying that in a disrespectful way. I'm just trying to own my fear. So we're reassuring each other, right? We're buttering each other up. We're soothing each other with empathy, right? I'm helping you take my message in. This is a team game. Every step of the way, we can appreciate each other, right? We're literally, it's a three-legged potato sack. We are walking step by step. So we got to go slow because reactivity happens fast. And so anytime you can feel that speed and that intensity ramping up, that's your cue to slow down. It feels so good to take accountability. But taking accountability is not admitting fault. It's acknowledging impact. And acknowledging impact is deeper than saying, I understand. I understand that it was like what it was like to be you. How do I know? You have to show me by walking through my experience out loud. So I'll leave you with this last piece. You know that cartoon with the 6 and the 9 on the ground? Or it's technically just looks different from both sides, right? So there's these two people who are arguing. There's the number 6 on the ground. To one of them, it looks like a 6. To the other, it looks like a 9 because they're viewing it from different angles. If you haven't seen it, look it up so you can picture it. The empathy that I'm talking about that heals is not, I can see how from your point of view, it's a 9, but for me, it's a 6. That's moving in the right direction for some people. That's progress, right? For some people, they're just stuck at, no, it's a 6. 6 is the number, and you need to come over here and just see that 6 is the right number. This is what happened. All couples get stuck arguing over what happened, right? Losing battle, objectivity, stuck in objectivity. The empathy that heals is walking around to the other side and letting the other number, 9, become your entire world and making it make sense out loud. Be like, I can see that. It makes so much sense from over here. I would be thinking and feeling all of the same things if I were you. Demonstrating it from the inside out. So that feeling of joining them is the emotional connectedness that we're looking for. Because you can do this in a parroting kind of cognitive way, and it doesn't feel connected. And that's why that visual is so helpful. You can do pretty good empathy and be like, yeah, it's different, and here's what that's like. But the repairing empathy is when you walk around to the other side and you get to cry together because you co-discover what hurt. And that's the magical place that we all crave. And something in you just goes, thank God you get what it's like to be me. Thank you for coming over here, sitting beside me, and being with me in my pain, in my fear, in my helplessness. And then you return to your place, and then I can do that with you. And so what I want you reflecting on is, what are your resistant points to empathy? Because we all resist that in different ways, and some people will struggle to apply this to their particular situation. So I want you to view this as resistance. Resistance to doing what works. Empathy is what we all want. That's why we open our mouths, so that you can understand me. And we can only understand each other when we get hurt and triggered, one at a time. And there are layers to pain that you're going to need to validate and empathize with. So it's not just a one and done. Oh, was it this? No, you're going to feel resolution. Resolution is a complete dissolution of everything that's in the way. The hurt's gone, the resentment's gone, everything that's in the way of your connection dissolves, and that flow of energy called intimacy and connection is restored. That's healing. The dissolution of what's in the way, right? There's that famous Rumi quote. I got one, different one that came through my mind. He said, our task is not to seek for love, but to remove all barriers to it. This is how we remove barriers. The judgments, the expectations, the resistance, the conclusions, the resentment, and the built-up compounding hurt because we keep invalidating each other's experience with good intentions. We keep dismissing, minimizing, invalidating each other's experience. And that single move, because that's all it is, it's a dance move. It's me saying, ow, and me turning away from you and not empathizing. It's a bid for connection. Hey, a tuned response is needed over here. And we go, no, me. You can both get what you need, empathy, if you take turns. And I really want you to get, if you don't correct that pattern, that is the pattern that leads to breakup and divorce, because we cannot sustain being hurt over and over and over again and not having our partner empathize with how they're a part of contributing to that pain. Key words, a part of. This is about how we impact each other in our relationship, that canoe that we're both sitting in. And when you get really good at that, every trigger just requires us to take turns and empathize and be sweet with each other and slow down and learn a little bit and own our experience and discover our primary emotions. And then we grow deeper and deeper and deeper. Conflict, we use every conflict to grow closer.